It's 60 BC in the Roman world. The Republic is staggering through its twilight. Pompey and Cassius dominate politics. Cicero is in the Senate, and young Julius Caesar is scheming for power. Far from Rome's marble forums, on the wild northern frontier of Gaul, the governor, Quintus Metellus Cell, receives a mysterious gift. Not amber, not furs, not the slaves that oiled the gears of diplomacy on the Roman frontier. The gift is people, a group of castaways. Their faces are unfamiliar. Their story is stranger still. They claim a storm had ripped them from their homeland, flung them across an endless sea, and left them stranded on the windswept beaches the Romans called Germania Laura, the shores of Germany. The record calls them India or Indians. But did they really come from India, or were they survivors from a land the Romans could not imagine, castaways from the Americas, delivered by the Atlantic's vast conveyor belt? This is no legend. It's a two-line report from Rome's earliest geographers, and if true, it could rewrite the history of when Old World and New first met. Music. The account originated with Cornelius Nepos, a biographer of the late Republic. His original text is lost. What survives are fragments preserved a century later by Pomponius Mela, Rome's first geographer, and Pliny the Elder, the famed encyclopedist who died at Pompeii. Mela, writing around AD 43, says Nepos used the tale to prove the world was circumnavigable. He records the men said they'd been taken ex Indies aquis, from Indian waters, and tandem in Germanium, at last emerged on the German shores. Beyond those seas, he adds, the world is locked by frost and ice. Pliny, writing in AD 77, repeats the story in Natural History 2. 67. For him it was evidence that Oceanus, the world sea, encircles the earth. He notes that the Suebi, a Germanic tribe, had gifted Schiller, quote, certain Indians driven by storms from Indian waters into Germany. Two lines, one extraordinary implication. For Romans, India was no myth. It was a place that drained their coffers. Pliny complains that India sucked 50 million sesterces of Roman gold each year, roughly $250 to $300 million today, in exchange for pepper, pearls, ivory, and fine cotton. So when they heard India, they imagined merchants from Muziris, Paducah, or other Indian ports in the Arabian Sea. Men tied to Rome by the monsoon winds and the Red Sea trade, but Rome's intellectuals also speculated boldly. The Stoic philosopher Posidonius, admired by Cicero, argued the inhabited world was smaller than many believed, and that a ship sailing west from Spain could, in principle, reach India. The geographer Strabo later echoed, quote, were it not for the immensity of the Atlantic, one could sail from Iberia to India on the same parallel. So in the late Republic, the idea of India by sailing west was already circulating. If the castaways had been Native Americans, whatever explanation they tried to give would likely have been understood through this lens and recorded as India. So where did they land? Mela is clear, a German littora on the German shores. In Roman geography, that meant only one seafront, the North Sea, or at its further stretch, the approaches to the Baltic. Germania had no coastline in the Mediterranean, so the landing cannot be imagined there. A Baltic landfall is unlikely. A storm-driven vessel from the west would be hard-pressed to thread the Danish Straits from the North Sea, and reaching the Baltic from the east out of India would have required a long overland journey, both at odds with Mela and Pliny's account of a storm-tossed voyage from Indian waters ending in a direct landfall on the German shores. The North Sea makes far more sense. The Romans called it the Oceanus Germanicus, the German Ocean, and knew its dangers well. In 12 BC, Drusus cut the Fossa Drusiana, a canal linking the Rhine to Lake Flevo in the sea. A generation later, in AD 16, his son Germanicus launched a fleet of 1,000 ships into those waters. A sudden storm tore it apart, scattering wreckage and drowning men along the coast. Tacitus recorded how the sea itself humbled Rome's might. If the castaways truly came by sea, they must have landed on this North Sea coast, the only maritime face of Germania, and that choice is significant. A North Sea arrival links directly to the Atlantic currents sweeping from the west, or in Roman imagination, to a speculative circumpolar ocean route skirting the top of the world. That leaves us with two oceans and two theories. How could men from Indian waters end up on the North Sea coast? Option 1, the circumpolar route. Mellor imagined a frozen northern circuit around Scythia and Scandinavia, but reality says otherwise. The Northeast Passage wasn't navigated until 1878 to 79, when the Swede Adolf Erik Nordenskjöld forced his steamship Vega through Arctic ice, spending 10 months trapped. If the steamship nearly failed, no ancient galley could survive. Option 2, the Atlantic. Here the physics are compelling. The Gulf Stream and North Atlantic drift currents act like a conveyor belt, moving 30 to 75 miles per day. Anything caught in them, wreckage, logs, even small boats, gets swept northeast toward Europe. And history proves it delivers people. As early as the 1400s, rumors abounded, driven by mysterious objects washing up. On the far west of Europe's reach, in the Azores, carved wooden objects made without iron washed ashore. On Flores, Columbus's own brother-in-law reported seeing two bodies with broad foreign faces, quote, very unlike Christians. In 1477, Columbus visited Galway, Ireland. In the margin of his copy of Imago Mundi, a cosmology book that discusses climatic zones, islands, rivers, and seas, a note is written that states, quote, men from Cathay have come from the west, Cathay being the historical name for China. There, Columbus, or possibly his brother, recorded a local tale. A man and woman of strange appearance had drifted ashore on tree trunks or a crude raft. Some historians now think they were Inuit, carried east by the North Atlantic drift, their features mistaken for Asian by startled locals. And in the 17th and 18th centuries, villagers on the Orkney and Shetland Islands off Scotland spoke of Finmen, mysterious kayakers glimpsed offshore. We now know they were Inuit hunters swept from Greenland. Two of their kayaks survive, one in Edinburgh, another in Aberdeen, where its exhausted paddler died soon after coming ashore. His kayak remains as proof the Atlantic can and does deliver human beings from the New World to the Old. This leaves the language question. Didn't Metellus Chair speak with the castaways to learn their origin? Some argue this proves they were from India, since Mediterranean trade with India already supplied interpreters. But Mellor and Pliny only say Chalair, learned by inquiry. They never specify a shared language or a direct Indo-Roman translation. That information could just as easily have been conveyed through gestures and objects rather than fluent conversation. Incidents like this were well documented. In AD 8, the poet Ovid, exiled by Augustus to the city of Tomis on the Black Sea for his scandalous poem Unzamatoria and a mysterious error, wrote that he could not speak the Getic tongue and had to, quote, make things known by gesture. And in Natural History 6, Pliny tells of a Roman freedman of Annius Placamus, shipwrecked on Taprobane, later known as Sri Lanka, in the 40s AD. Though he had no common language, he communicated enough about his home in Rome to intrigue the king, who later sent a diplomatic mission to Emperor Claudius. Communication in antiquity didn't require fluency. It required persistence, pantomime, and time. And yet, one slip of the pen could change the whole story. In 1891, the Journal of the American Geographical Society suggested the word Indos might be a copyist error for Irinos, meaning the Irish, or Iberos, meaning the Spanish. If so, the tale sinks like a shipwreck, but if the text is correct, if they were Indi, we must wrestle with two possibilities. One, Indian merchants somehow circumnavigating the frozen pole centuries before Nordenskjöld. The other, Tragic Atlantic drift. Native Americans, perhaps Inuits, swept by storm and current to Germania, the first unrecorded contact between hemispheres. The Romans chose the explanation that fit their maps, but we are not bound by their limitations. We will never know their names, nor the shore they were torn from. What survives are two lines in Latin, a storm, and a coastline that swallowed fleets. A reminder that history is not only carved in marble, but sometimes delivered sodden and salt-burned by the sea. If you had to bet which explanation wins, let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching Dark 5. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of this world and beyond.